overheated last time because once again I forgot that the computer overheats if I hold the keyboard on top of the laptop and have some programs running. So it overheated. Now it should be fine, but I absolutely cannot guarantee it, so we might get cut off again. But time will tell. You can see how slow it is because if I like move, if I do anything here, you can see how slowly it progresses towards the end there. Gonna be playing some amount of Central American Union thing. This is the Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich expansion where we assume that Germany won the First World War and then there's a Second World War which is much like the Second World War, but from the point of view of Germany being the guy who won the previous one. So also I didn't have my video capture device on one moment. I need to fix my laptop as well as buy one of those things you put under your laptop that has a fan in it that cools the laptop.
Jokainen mies tietää, että sinne kun napsahtaa, niin se sattuu. Kyllä se sattuu. Siellä on onneksi teräskupit pojilla nyt, mutta kyllä se silti sattuu. Varovaista ovat molempien herrojen.
It's interesting that a bullet has no more force in it than a mildish punch, but since it's directed in such a small area, it actually has a huge amount of damage. It's interesting.
Kuinka itse näet, millä tavalla se parantaa Heikkolan asemaa? No se saattaa olla jollain spekulaatiolla, totta kai vasenkätisiä ottelijoita on keskimääräisesti hieman vähemmän, niin se saattaa jonkinlainen etu olla, mutta en usko, että tässä tämän kokemuksen omaavilla kavereilla sillä hirveätä merkitystä enää on.
Nyt vielä yksi nutshot, niin otteluun siihen.
Sekä että päin.
One more shot in the nuts and the match will be there.
Saa Heikkolan häkkiä vasten ja tulee kovilla iskusarjoilla ja sieltä lentää hammassuot Darunovilta suusta. Tässä kylläkäs ja ottelu jatkuu nopeasti. Heikkola oli pahassa ja taas ilman yhden takakäden sieltä.
Tee niitä vitun vastalyöntejä, älä mene sinne päälle. Jotka kummatkin isoja äijä, jotka on tottunut tekemään vastalyöntiä. Mitä enemmän sä otat niitä moukkuja, niin sitä enemmän sä väsähdät. Ja nyt on jo vähän siinä, ettei niinku oikein tule vauhia. Vaikka kuinka löysi. Kerää sitä akkuu täyteen, tee niitä vastaiskuja ja yritä vähän niinku välttää sitä lähikontaktia.
Ja sitä kautta sitten lähtee kolmanteen erään helpommasta asemasta. Tässä vaiheessa taitaa kyse olla enää
kolmannessa, kun tää voittaa nämä 2 pisteerää, niin yrität knockouttiin, mutta keräät nyt voimaa siihen.
Tällä hetkellä mennään ja kumpi sitten saa sen fokuksen keskitettyä paremmin siihen ottelun voittamiseen, niin se on kyllä vahvoilla tässä vaiheessa. Nyt Heikkola pääsi vähän. Joo, kyllä nyt piska päälle. Sai Heikkola samanlaisen tilanteen kuin äsken oli Darunovilla, missä painu kaveri häkkiä vasten ja jako vaarallisia osumia. Molemmat on... Oi, siinä oli... Nyt on Heikkola pulassa. Kalliin virheen oloinen kompastuminen potkun jälkeen, liukastuminen. Danov pääsi 2,5 ilmaiseksi siihen päälle nyt ja pääsee siitä sitten kenties jakamaan iskuja. Mutta Triangelin tapaista hän näytti hakemaan sieltä. No siinä vähän käsilukkoon viritystä ehkä oli äsken, mutta Danov on sen verran väsyneen näkö, että ei ihan hirveän vaarallisia iskuja lähde, mutta Heikkola on kyllä silmäkulvoja vuotaa melkoisen paljon, että toivotaan, että hän pääsisi vielä tuolta päältä, alta päälle kerran kääntämään tämän ottelun. Ja minuutti jäljellä ottelun toista erää.
I like the Finnish fighting show, but I don't like the judges. They, in Finnish, things tend to be home-centric and support the Finnish guy in judge roundings, but it is a little Lubuang, in my opinion. So if this computer doesn't overheat, you'll see me play the Central American Union. I might have to leave in 20 or so minutes, but it's not certain, so we'll see.
10 sekuntia jäljellä. Toista erää. Molemmat pitävät vaan positiota siinä, lepäilevät. No joo, kyllä se...
And the Finnish judges usually start to call for action too quickly in ground control situations.
Ihan hirveästi ratkaisuiskuja, että enemmän piti kontrollia siinä. Harmillinen kaatuminen Heikkolalta toisen erän lopussa ja sitä kautta Dano kuin ilmaiseksi pääsi päällipositioon ja varmasti voitti tämän erän näillä
Nyt ei auta mikään muu kuin yrittää sitä knockouttia, mutta nyt kun pelasi tuossa kakkoserässä, vaikka ihan selvää oli, että häviää, niin johtopeliä, niin nyt on energia tosi lopussa, niin kyllä mä veikkaan, että Andreille menee.
Tämä erä ratkaisee sitten kaiken, että kuinka tämä loppuviimein päättyy.
Siinä kakkosessa olisi pitänyt ihan täysillä lataa niitä akkuja ja antaa sen toisen tuhlata ja sitten lähteä sen kolmosen sillä. Nyt ei voi mitään muuta kuin kolmosessa yrittää knockouttiin, mutta noilla energioilla se tuskin onnistuu, niin tää taitaa olla tässä. Tulee Heikkolalle turpakotaan.
Kättä paiskataan ja sitten mennään. Katsotaan kuinka herrojen käy, kumpi vie voiton. Kuten itse sanotin, nyt on Heikkola paikka näyttää. Joo, ei tässä ei hirveästi mun mielestä ole vaihtoehto, että ottelun täytyisi voittaa nyt keskeytyksellä ennen tämän erän loppua ja silloin on Sakulla mahdollisesti, muuten on vaikea ja pitkä tie. Tietysti etukäteen näitä ei kannattaisi hirveästi spekuloida, ettei sitten joudu tunnustamaan olleensa väärässä näitä omia arvioittelua. Hyvinkin paljon molemmat saavat niin kuin jopa lopetukseen johtavia iskuja, mitkä on ollut niin oikeasti vaikuttavia iskuja. Ja senhän näkee katsomalla miesten kasvoja ja vartaloja. Siellä ei ole säästelty. Molemmat ovat todella aktiivisia väsymyksestä huolimatta. Joo, kyllä se molemmat on aktiivisia. Ehkä Danonovin pikkasen oi siinä. Oliko taas liukastuminen? Kyllä se vaikutti liukastumiselta, mutta ei se kyllä. Nyt täytyy Sakun saada sen verran tiukat otteet. Kaveri on hikinen ja vertakin vielä joka paikassa, niin se on nyt vaikea saada hyviä otteita kiinni, mutta kyllä täytyy Sakun saada ehkä kaverin kaatettua mattoon allensa ja siitä päästä kokeilemaan ottelun ratkaisua. Mitä uskot, mikä olisi nyt Sakun temput, millä hän pääsisi tästä nyt? No mä itse asiassa kyllä niin näkisin, että pitäisi tuolta kauempaa lähteä meneen tuonne alemmas jalkoihin, että tuohon vyötärölle ja hartiakorkeudelle tuohon klintsiin meneminen ei enää johda kyllä välttämättä siihen alasvientiin. Molemmat ovat sen verran väsyneitä ja ehkä pikkasen helpommin puolustaa sitä tilannetta, että pitäisi päästä yllättäen sinne vähän kauempaa matalemmalle jalkoihin ja saada kaveri suoraan selälleen. Ja toki sinne väsyneenä aina on helppo tehdä sitä. Että molemmilla herroilla on olkapäissä jyllää, maitohapot enää ei jaksa käsiäkään pidellä hirveästi ylhäällä. Kyllä ne jyllää, joo, ja jyllää varmasti joka paikassa muualla kuin pelkässä olkapäissä. Tää on ollut kova matsi molemmille. Ja edelleen tarkkaillaan ja yritetään hakea sitä ratkaisevaa iskua. Joo, pikkasen tempo on laskenut, mikä on täysin luonnollista yleensäkin ottelussa, mutta sitten tietysti isolla miehillä se vielä korostuu ja 2 minuuttia on pikkasen reilu ottelu jäljellä. Kyllä Daronov hallitsee myös tätä erää tällä hetkellä.
Sitten tulee 30-27. Hyvältä sä käy 29-28. Ei mitenkään enemmistöäänin niin Heikkolalle, mutta tuomarit olisi kuinka ihan
Daronov määrittelee etäisyyttä paremmin. Koko ottelun ajan oikeastaan tehnyt näin. Miten sinun oman
Nyt ei mitään
kokemuksesi
muuta kuin
kautta,
toivoa,
kuinka
että tulee
paljon
vituilta
energiaa
moukku.
vie se, että et ole hallitsemassa kehän tai häkin keskustaa?
No se ei välttämättä vie sitä energiaa,
jos niin kuin tässä Eikkolan tapauksessa, että hän ei
tuhlas siinä kakkosrundissa ne paukut, kun tiesi, että tulee
hirveän
tolleen
matkaa
runnit.
enemmän, mutta hän joutuu aina, kun hän lähtee
Ei oikein halunnut
äkkiä vasten,
talletta
niin hän joutuu tekemään niin nopeita ratkaisuja siinä vaiheessa. Hän on käytännössä niin kontrolloi tuon etäisyyden, koska lyödään ja koska ei lyödä. Ja reilu minuutti jäljellä ottelun kolmatta erää. 60 sekuntia on pitkä aika. 60 sekuntia on pitkä aika. Mitä tahansa voi tapahtua, mutta nyt täytyisi Saku, jos mieli minun papereissani voittaa tämän ottelun, niin nyt täytyisi tehdä kyllä paljon ratkaisuja. Tällä hetkellä Heikkula on niin väsynyt, että hän käytännössä nojaa häkkiin. Joo, aina silloin kun Danone hyökkää, niin Heikkula joutuu perääntymään muutama askeleen. Ja siinä se onkin se, että hän ei pysty perääntymään, vaan häkin seinä tulee sitten vastaan. Ja silloin sitten Danone pääsee ottaa se etäisyyden kiinni ja iskemään, niin kuin tässäkin tapauksessa. Lähti hakevia alasvientiä ja kääntää Sakun alleen mattoon. Hyvä alasvienti ja ottaa siitä sivukontrollin. Ja 10 sekuntia. Lyhyitä ikäviä kyynärpäitä siitä vielä antaa Sakun korvalle. Näin, sitten katsotaan, miten ne arvailut piti paikkansa. Kova ottelu, molemmin puolin. Kyllä herrat joutuu töitä tekemään. Vahvaa suorittamista. Oli, ja kumpikaan ei antanut periksi. Se on aina ilo havaita, että molemmat haluaa todellakin voittaa sen ottelun ja antaa kaikkensa, jättää kaikkea. Silloin voi hyvällä mieli katsoa, että se peiliin matsin jälkeen vaikka häviäisikin, jos todellakin antaa kaikkensa. Kun tulee tämän tyyppisiä vastoinkäymisiä, että saattaa tulla häviö kehässä, niin kuinka niistä palaudutaan? No kyllähän niistä palaudutaan. Eihän se ole kuin urheilu. Ja kyllä ennemmin tai myöhemmin se kohtaa jokainen vapaa-ottelija niin, että jos siihen tappioon musertuu, niin
kuka jää siihen?
oli väärä ura tai väärä laji sitten, että kyllä se täytyy hyväksyä, että urheiluun kuuluu niin voitot kuin tappiotkin, että niistä pitää oppia ja kerätä itsensä uudelleen kasaan ja nousta taas vahvempana takaisin.
No ei muuta kuin siinä kakkosrundissa olisi säästänyt energiaa ja antanut toisen tuhlata ja kolmosessa tähdännyt nakauttiin, niin se on ainoa mitä mä olisin
tässä ovat aika kovia, että pitää
parempi se oli, ei se ihmeellisempää.
Tästä lähtee palautumaan. Kyllä, ehdottomasti. Heikkola vaikuttaa lopen uupuneelta, kun taas sitten vastustaja näyttää enemmän kuin Freisiltä. No joo, siinä tietysti vähän varmaan tulee sitä psykologistakin puolta just, että silloin kun sä oot tappion kärsinyt, niin ehkä ne tuntemukset siinä iskee pikkasen kovempaa kuin silloin kun olet saanut ainakin noin lähtökohtaisesti koet saaneesta voitoa, eihän sitä vielä tässä ole julistettu, mutta Danone varmasti kokee, että hän on ottelun voittanut, niin se mieliala lähtee nousuun ja palautuminen lähtee tapahtumaan ja pääsee ottaa vähän yleisönsä, niin kuin Danone siinä tekeekin. Ja parit selfieä, niin kuin äsken peli. Niin.
Ei ollut tällä keskiammatilla vielä mahdollisuutta. So this Central American Union is not yet strong enough to stand up to Russia, which is no surprise. 8 divisions with 3 brigades each is not enough. It's about 100,000 in the field. That just isn't enough, no matter how you calculate it. We're already at extensive conscription, so Russia moving from volunteer to light conscription. Starting to look like we need more territory.
30, 26, 30, 27, 30. All for the winner by unanimous decision, Andrei Selezo!
Yeah, that's what I thought. You can see that the computer is still way too hot for this game, but we'll try. So here's my Central American Union. I started as, I think, Guatemala, and I started to progress towards the Central American Union events, but the San Salvador, Honduras, and what is this guy? Nicaragua, I think, decided to go against my idea of Central American Union and declared war on me, and I got few provinces across the border, but there was no way I could push into their triple alliance territory. So I went on the defensive and waited until I had all my units at 100% strength, and they were attacking my well defended front line, and focused all my guys on like a few provinces along the coast and took like the north here without taking San Salvador, and then moved all my units to the south and took San Miguel, which cut off San Salvador, and then it was easy prey. And once it fell, taking the other states was easy. As you can see, I have 8 divisions, all at regular, because the experience level drops when you add new units to them. So as you can tell, I'm rather short supplied in artillery. My infantry equipment after the annexations of the other participants in this war went up enormously. I got a lot of old infantry equipment, but this is truly old infantry equipment and not worth being talked about as modern in any sense of the word. But 20,000 spare rifles. I have about 100,000 guys in field. It's telling me that I have 250,000 total manpower, but I have no idea where it's sinking that manpower, because it's certainly not in the field army. And I'm not going to get involved in the US Civil War, and I'm at extensive conscription. Russia is moving from volunteer only to limited conscription, while I'm already at extensive conscription. I'm at the first conscription level, which causes a delay in something or a reduction of something, which in this case is training time, because forces aren't cracked up to be frontline guys, but it is not much of a hassle. Considering I have spare support equipment, I'm going to be adding a maintenance company to the unit. It's not much, but at least there's like now a maintenance company. I'm nowhere near enough to challenge, powerful enough to challenge somebody like Mexico, but we'll see. The United States of America was getting defeated by the combined syndicates of America, but the southern state here was taken by the US, so they joined, and now it looks like this combined state is losing, while the Pacific state is holding its own but taking the western parts of Canada. So if the Pacific states of the US manages to actually take Canada and Alaska and make a battle line in the middle, they might be able to hold off, depending on how badly the war against the combined syndicates of America goes. But before that, I need Panama and San Jose, and then I need to focus on a navy that can take Haiti, Cuba, and West Indies Confederation. But it's still some time. Then I will look at perhaps taking the dominion of Canada's Panama Canal, but that depends on how their war goes. But for now, I will focus on taking Costa Rica and Panama. Here's my battle line decision, which is when the war breaks out, just advance south enough to take the capital. This is not a war that requires a lot of thought. It's a rather simple one. still have a rather sizable deficit in my military construction, but it is not something that is very bad. We'll move the Remington guy to the bottom of the list because don't need rifles. In fact, I will move the tank even further down. Eventually, I might need fighters, but as long as I don't even have the manpower to deploy them, there is not much use in them. No idea why it's reporting my manpower as 200,000, but giving me 100,000 to the army. No idea. There's definitely something weird going on there. This is very slow because I'm only using one CPU because it's gonna overheat. Technically, I'm actually using one core instead of one CPU. That seems to be the best speed it can do. I'm gonna risk overheating it, but don't try this at home, guys. My mouse is once again almost breaking. Thinking of going as far south as Colombia, Ecuador, and probably the West Indies Confederation, and as far north as the southernmost border of Mexico. It seems like Mexico is large enough in like terms of international recognition that they wouldn't benefit from joining some kind of federation. So is the US, but some countries like Panama would definitely benefit from joining some kind of union. Too small, in my opinion. And yes, before you do get angry, my own country is also too small. There's a kind of like an aspect of being a small country which is not often mentioned. And it is that people from foreign backgrounds can deduce what you are and how you are as a person very easily when there is a small country, because there's literally like no option in essence of sounds wrong, but hiding who you are. And it sounds good in theory until you have to do something like a trade treaty with somebody or anything of that nature, and you suddenly realize that you don't have like the ability to hide what you'd be willing to pay for a good, for example. I'm surprised that it really shows me as total manpower 244,000, while in the field I have 97,000 and nobody in training and no Navy or Air Force worth mentioning, and 500 in garrison. But it still shows my manpower as half of what it actually is. I wonder if they're in academic supply, for example. That would mean about 2/3 of my army are in supply duties, which is weird considering I have only domestic territory. It's weird. I'd really benefit from this, giving me the whole 244,000 total manpower that I kind of need. Truly benefit from it. And my frontline units aren't even at full manpower. Nice, I have a destroyer ready. My military is growing. And now that I actually have something, I'll put them to auto deploy into that fleet. World War One destroyer in 1940 as the top of the line that we can build. Not very encouraging. We only have 3 tech teams too. We're gonna be so late in technology. At least we're studying everything that could conceivably speed up our technological growth rate. We still need a few of these guys. This we need the political power. We also need the manpower, which is sad. Do not use the oldest weapons available. It's gonna reduce the strength a little bit as the guys hand in their old weapons, but not by much. Still need an insane amount of stuff. At least I'm starting to build up my industry now. Even building full infrastructure in these provinces didn't increase the production of chromium, which is very sad. Large inaccessible area in Central America. So this confederation is just the mountainside. Interesting. Costa Rica is nowhere near strong enough to stand up to me, but there is an event that must fire for me to have cores on them, so I cannot occupy them yet. So now is a good chance to actually build my civilian industry. My military is already quite powerful. For a Central American state to last three rounds against Russia, even though you lose, is pretty good. Could have done better, but it's pretty good. And I'm at partial mobilization, I think. Yeah. these are only available if you're at war with somebody who's larger than you, but I don't need them yet. I think I had them on earlier, but the war with the Central American enemies that I had ended in my victory, so it jumped back to partial, I think, but I could be wrong. Even though I do appear to have a slight manpower deficit, it's not as bad as you might think because there's this military event that I'm gonna get to fairly soon of mass mobilization, I think. Or was it this one? No, it's this one. Fairly soon is relative, but it gives me 5% more population for the army, which is what I'm already getting. And if it ends up with like 500,000 in this total manpower at some point, but I still only have like 100,000 in the field, and I'm willing to call it a bug and move on. But if it's like half of what I have in the field, it's different. And you actually get to train because you are a fresh green guy. Might actually take this guy as well because it's at the same ocean coastline province, but the guy down south I don't think I'll take. Might advance somewhat, but nowhere near as much as I'd do if I was like a autocrat, if you will. Here's the map of Europe. As you can see, France is dominating. Belarus is fighting against Russia, but for the most part it seems quiet. This is a weird Finnish map. Very weird. The Ottomans are a huge power. Seems everybody's kind of separated into smaller powers, which means it's a good opportunity to try to make a larger nation. Still pretty dangerous considering all this stuff, but it's not an impossibility. I think I might want to trigger the war propaganda pretty soon because war support is pretty low. Still getting the rally public support thing, which is slowly raising my social liberal party's support. I don't want to push it above 50%, but 45, for example, is quite all right. My occupied territory orders are to have a specified police unit, that's a cavalry unit, and the lightest amount of military or any kind of control due to trying to get the support higher, but it's gonna take me a while. It's gonna take me a while indeed. And here is my police unit template. Only use old equipment and only use low units. And there's no armored forces in this cavalry unit. No special forces and cannot be parachuted. It's the weakest unit ever. Once I get military police unit studied, I'll add it to the cavalry, but not for a while. I remember this area being inaccessible, and now it's for some reason accessible, so I wonder what happened. One unit doing naval exercises does a huge amount of naval experience, while my entire army doing military exercises does almost nothing. Manpower is almost full, but that's not enough. I need the equipment as well. And more importantly, I need to upgrade these railway connections because those guys are not getting anything to the front. And as you can see, mouse tends to double click because it's broken. This one needs a level 2, and this one needs a level 2. Yeah, that looks about fine. Here's my former capital. I don't recall which is the current capital. Once I get 100% in my infrastructure, truck needed, or truck usage, or whatever, I'll put this one on trucks as well. Now it's on horses because there's a few here that are lower than this bright color in the middle in terms of supply. But for now, I think it might be worthwhile to boost this infrastructure. Actually do it like this. And you two with the very low cost get to be front line. This will be very quick, yeah, a few days. Attacking with this level of supply would guarantee that I lose this one. So it's plus 2% versus the center one. It's not gonna be. So it's either the left one or the right one. I think it's gonna be the left one because I think federalized army at this point sounds better. I'm hoping there's something to do with increasing the amount of tech teams because I'm gonna be so freaking behind on tech teams. But it's gonna take a while. There we go. So I'm gonna go with the tracked foreign engineers first. support equipment is about to be full. Means I can start researching another supply using unit. Thinking that I might wanna, but I don't have enough army experience, transform my units so they aren't so artillery heavy. Right now they're very heavy in terms of artillery, which is why they have the artillery logo of just a dot. Yes, they're considered to be artillery units because there's 24 infantry, 24 artillery, 12 mountaineers, 4 signals, and 4 maintenance companies. So they're looking at it like it's an infantry artillery unit. I'd hate to take the service by requirement thing. Starts to influence the construction speed of engineering things, so it's not a good thing. Once I have the entire Middle Americas and some of the islands and cores in them, I might go from extensive to light conscription, especially if I get the event to fire from the IDS tree, which gives me more manpower as well as some from the army experience tree. It might be enough to not bother the people with extensive conscription. It feels wrong to me. Service by requirement is out unless we're in a really bad defensive war. By the election in 1945, I expect to have those 2 states south of me annexed. There seems to be some, hate to call it ghost-like, but ill-defined country size that you ought to have. When it gets too large, it gets too unwieldy because your neighbors don't know anything about your internal work. So it turns to a point where you don't literally have knowledge on your neighbors and they don't have knowledge on you. And if it goes all out in that, then it's very bad. But there is a level where too small a country is too easy to read for others. Ottomans entered war with Russia. I think the Ottomans are going to lose. Yeah, the Ottomans are definitely going to lose that one. There's no way they'll be able to defeat the Russians. If you look here, they have 28 to 115 military power, while the Russians have 114 to 352. So the Russians are going to most likely win that one. Once it starts to look like one party in North America is clearly winning, I'll give the opponent parties military aid just to delay the war, because a unified USA for me right now is one of my worst fears. I mean, it's not the end of the world for me, but until I get a sizable Central American Union, which actually has enough power to at least stand up to Mexico, then the US truly is my worst enemy, worst fear. If I get Mexico in, as well as the states south of Colombia, the West Indies, and Venezuela, then I might actually be able to stand up to the US, but it's still very unlikely. I'd need more than that. The US has a military power of 66 to 172 and 57 military factories and 58 civilian factories. I have a military strength of 8, with that being the entire stockpile of me. So I am not in a position to stand up to them. We'll see after I get things like Mexico into the alliance, which is unlikely. Mexico is historically not very friendly to the Central American Union. But if I get all these guys, that's 8 plus 3 plus 6 plus 3 plus 14 plus 5. That's still not enough, but at least it's something. All of those put together, I might be able to stand up to the 12 colonies, but not the whole of the US. How goes the Ottoman War? If I was the Ottomans, I'd very quickly try to take the emirate of Cyrenaica and then expand as quickly as possible towards the Eastern Front, but I wouldn't be tied in 2 fronts. It still looks like a loss for the Ottomans. Starting to be ready in terms of motorized, but I'm still lacking behind. There we go. I wonder if the factory that's about to be built will go into production of consumer goods or more civilian factories. Could really use the production benefit. And as this slowly increases, we'll also get more. But it's very slow increase. Honduras, Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala are the key states in this. Soon there will be Costa Rica and then Panama. But all in good time. But for the coastline invasion of Cuba or Haiti, I'm gonna need a lot more units as well as paratrop capability. Otherwise, taking the beaches against an island who's had a lot of time to build is nearly impossible. And I probably need to shift my units into a better naval architecture because I'm so gonna lose that invasion. But Costa Rica and Panama should still be easy. So I won't say that I'll have any of the islands by the next election, but I am making the election promise in quotes that I'll have Costa Rica and Panama before the next elections. it did go to construction. Seems the total manpower is going down while the amount in the army is going up, so there might be some kind of delay between getting guys into your nominative manpower pool or nominal manpower pool, as well as a delay into getting that manpower into the field. Instead of like in the normal game, as soon as the guys report the manpower pool, you'll be able to put them in the units. I think, but I could be wrong. I'm thinking I'll have Costa Rica by the end of 42. It's probably too optimistic, but let's look at end of 42. Panama, I will say, is not as much effort after Costa Rica because there's no event to get Panama next, so you'll have to do it manually. So they can be done at any time, but I have nowhere near the naval capacity to bypass Costa Rica and hit their ports on my own. So I have to take Costa Rica first. I'm also getting quite a lot of naval experience at the moment, which is unusual. With one destroyer doing the training, it's unusual to get that much manpower. Probably at full training now. Oh, not yet. Trained. After they're at fully trained, they get to regular, but to train any higher, you need field experience. As you can see, training units to be field ready takes a lot of time. And as my field army gets more and more equipment, their training level decreases because they're getting more equipment and they'd eventually need to retrain, but their thing was quite high. Next up is generic industrial concern due to the industrial research speed. The civilian and military factory construction speed is effective, but it is not the primary cause. It needs supply hubs down south, but I think I'll utilize the Costa Rican ones after I take over the country, because if you look here, you can notice that Costa Rica has two supply depots fairly close to the border with no railway connection to my side of the border, but they're still fairly close. So I think I'll use the Costa Rican supply network instead of building my own supply depot, like here, for example. Wait until I have the whole region before using this event of reorganized railway system, because it gives a supply hubs huge construction bonus, but I don't have enough to use the entire construction bonus before the end of the 120 days bonus it gives, so there's no point in doing it yet. So we're looking at sometime in 42 for our invasion of Costa Rica, and let's be cautious and say sometime during 43 our invasion of Panama. Then we need to start building a navy to eventually take the islands. Once we have the islands and the regions down south, we might actually take on Mexico, but it seems unlikely. As I've said, Mexico seems large enough to stand on its own. And at least I don't need new oil capacity at the moment. It's very good. We'll see what happens once I start the general motorization of the armed forces, but that's going to take a long time. Our industry is nowhere near capable of supporting a motorized army at the moment. What's the situation in North America like? Still roughly a stalemate. West Indies Confederation is joining in. Ottomans are slowly losing to Russia, just as predicted, and they still haven't taken the Emirate of Cyrenaica, so they're in two-front war. Exactly what they should not be in. But Iraq is aligned with Ottomans, so they might have a off chance of winning this, but it does indeed look like they're being pushed back across the front. They would only take that Cyrenaica and possibly join with Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, and even Muscat. It might be Oman, it might be a chance, but they'd probably still need things like Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, and they still probably wouldn't win. I can start Lend-Lease, but I prefer not to do it with the amount that I have. We'll see after I take the Central American Union and there's enough in reserve to actually start giving stuff to people who I prefer to win, but for now, no. Besides, I'm not strongly tied to the Ottoman-Russian war on either side. Feels like it might be better to let them slug it out while I cautiously wait on the sidelines. By the way, I cannot express how much better I feel now that the. Did this just change colors? Oh, I think it did. Oh, that I feel after I switched from the 1 liter reactor to the zero point 0.3 liter reactor. I can guarantee you that no matter what they say in public media, sometimes too large is just too large. It makes you feel like your world is in a state of different shock that isn't good. It just feels off. So let's try with 3 deciliters. If we're lucky, we might push it up, but I don't think so. Seems likely that we'll be set with 3 deciliters. In a 1 liter pot, this particular reactor model growed to be over a meter tall, and that is way, way, way too large. Seems like even the Costa Ricans cannot supply their army in the front. There's this little skull icon here. Seems like even they can't supply their army in the front, so my push should be easier than I thought. If they have one good division in both of those provinces with full entrenchment and full supply, then it would be hard for even 8 divisions total to push through. But if they're also suffering from supply issues and their army isn't ready on the front, then by the time they redeploy back to San Jose, their capital, I would have three-pronged attack because I'd have at least a three-pronged attack at that point, and it seems likely that I'll win. Though it might be that, though it is uncertain, but might be that I need Dominion of Canada's military access before I can actually cross into the rest of Panama. But that is undecided. If I take the western part of Canada, it might be enough to force Panama, western part of Canada. Western part of Panama, it might be enough to force the Panamans to sue for peace. There's a ledger in here somewhere that shows the status of the there's a ledger in here somewhere that shows the status of the top 10 players, but I have no idea how to access it. It's not F10 and it's not F1. Those are map modes, so I have no idea how to access it. There's supposed to be a status supply ledger for all the things that you might want to check up on. Yeah, that's not what I was looking for. Ottomans are getting completely wrecked by Russia. Ah, those are in the Entente. So it's gonna end in a war between me and who else is in the Entente? France? Not even France. France's colonies mostly. So it's actually not a good option to invade these guys. The Dominion of Canada is the faction leader. So it looks like I might not actually be able to take Costa Rica because they're in a faction, but time will tell. And I cannot ally with these guys. The Entente is pretty divided actually at the moment. And they have fairly few forces at my front. I am worried about the massive South African and South African Entente. But they might not have the naval capacity to attack me. France certainly has. But it's already entangled in a civil war. Interesting. Might actually be possible to take that one. Which means that since Pacific states are the guys fighting Canada and the US doesn't seem to be at war, yes, the US isn't at war with Canada, then I need to send to the PSA. It's not much, but I'll do it anyway. Hope they sent the oldest models and not the newest models. I don't like that as a liberal you can't form factions and cannot join factions. I don't like that. Those are two limiting options. If they only sent the earliest equipment, which is from the 1800s, then I didn't suffer much of a loss of equipment, but that's still pretty alarming. Hope they didn't send the top of the line models. At least we'll see a weakening of Canada by the Pacific states, but on the other hand, if they get too weakened, the Pacific states might end up taking the entire North American continent, which means that to balance them off, I'd need to take the entire South American continent. So it's gonna be a difficult one. There we go, that much drop from the entire military aid sending. So now we need a hospital just to increase the amount of manpower we get back into the field. Then the next construction research that gets complete will probably go to studying this one. With 3 tech teams, I'm hopelessly behind. With 4, I might have a small chance of being powerful enough. Now, if I do get into a large war, then at least I'll have a lot more infantry experience to change my armies, because you get this green star, which is infantry experience or army experience, when you go into a frontline situation, and most of my units could really do with some modernization, so we'll see. Looks like, despite them being in the Entente, I'll declare war on them, but it might not be in 42. Depends on how fast I can advance along the tech tree. I need at least the 5% extra into my manpower. So I signed with the PSA. If the USA wins, they're going to be very upset with me. But in my defense, the USA isn't fighting Canada, and Canada is my main opponent at the moment, so I needed it in my defense. If the US was fighting Canada, I would have certainly sent the weapons to them. Or if the US had like a doctrine of don't get involved in the Central American wars. Seems like Canada's military is showing up in San Jose. They have most likely one division, could be more. I should still be powerful enough to take them on. Though it's a pretty close call. After attract foreign engineers, I need to do sad that I haven't found anything like useful that you can use the command points on except promotion of units, and that seems to be not worth it. When I joined the Central American Union, I lost my best general, which is very sad because he was damn good. He had like 6 points of experience, while the new guy that I hired had 2. So he was against the thing. That or he got a government job. Can't even deploy my air force because I'm at insufficient manpower. On the other hand, because I'm opposed to unrestricted population growth. And during this period, there was a very hard population growth. I might want to push the mobilization higher just to limit that, but for now, I don't see it as worthwhile. It might not be 42 because that's a lot of industry things that I gotta research first. I think I might be able to take even with the Entente opposing me San Jose, and at least now I don't have to worry about crossing the Panama Channel because the Canadians will get involved anyway. In fact, considering how urgent it is when the fighting breaks out to do this quickly so the Canadians cannot reinforce, I'm gonna go to fast advance. All right, I have a new tactic. Still ahead of its time. So let's do this one first. More encryption and decryption. It's gonna help my field army quite a lot. Minuscule increase in army experience because I don't have anything in the higher up positions in the army that produces experience like some of these guys. Army experience plus 12. Well, that didn't change anything. I will look at the Mexico War when I have 100 total factories. I currently have 2. So that'll take a time. So liberals are very much in ascendance. Since motorized has a surplus, I'll add this guy to the highly motorized stockpile. Might be able to support some of these guys more. Probably not though, because it'll just reduce my overall supply level. This railroad connection needs to be built. Could really stand for somebody buying another stockpile of these chromiums that I have left. But they'd prefer to buy in stocks of 8 because that's what you need one factory to pay for. Even if you buy one, it will cost you one factory. So they're buying from other sources. And I have nowhere near enough industry to start thinking of importing things from my military. They'll have to make do with scrap metal. It'll seriously reduce their construction capability, but it might be worthwhile. Cuba's gonna be a huge chromium supply, so they're probably before Heidi. Yeah, Cuba's first. You just can't just name a country nipples. What about Nepal? Ooh, that's good. Shocker. God gets it right. What about nipple? Can't just name a country nipple. What about Nepal? And Ottomans are still losing to Russia. Yeah, pretty badly too. I'd forego east of Tehran, at least to the Afghanistan border, before I'd allow them to threaten Tehran. But I don't think the Ottomans have enough manpower to actually hold the entire front. Especially with the fact that they didn't take out the Emirate of Cyrenaica, so they're about to lose Alexandria. These are all very resource-poor regions. Ottomans don't have many resources except for a huge amount of oil and chromium. Yeah, that's my cue to go. Joo, soitit. Mä oon kämpillä. Joo, mä tuun sinne kanssa. Moi. welcome back. Have to, with the greatest sense of paranoia, check if the bag that I got of my smoking supplies is sufficient. It does seem a little bit light, but considering that I already wired or load or whatever your word is about 300 this month, I'm lucky to get anything at all, because after a certain point it is like loan sharking, in that if you already own money and try to get a loan, your terms will be worse and worse progressively. So it is difficult to get good supplies. I also opened the cupboard behind me because I was lacking light, but it should not be too bothersome. I might show you guys the reactor, but it usually gets my videos blocked, and this one seems important enough not to get blocked. I have wired around 300 this month. This month has been really bad for me because I was expecting that my meds would be completely paid for by the state, and as is norm in what you'd call socialist states, the state is fucking with me in that it is slowly increasing how much of the meds I have to pay for myself, which is kind of normal because they're doing it to make sure that I don't scam them on the meds, that if I do need them, I'll pay for them. And they are at the same time lowering the dose, which means that the meds are actually more and more inexpensive for me. It's like slowly compressing from both ends to get the guy to quit. So, you know. So, imagine your first shot of insulin being free. First shot of insulin being free, but they do like an analysis of your body mass index and other things, like, are you eating a vegetarian diet, are you trying to control your symptoms and such. And over time, as they determine whether or not you're taking your disease seriously, or if you're just or if you're just taking the pills as a crutch because you know that your lifestyle is so unhealthy that you have no chance against the disease on your own, then they will slowly give you these targets of better body mass index, more exercise to control your disease naturally, and at the same time punishing you if you fail in the body mass index tests and similars, while rewarding you by cheaper meds if you go well in them. If you imagine that for diabetes, it might be roughly the same. So that's what we're seeing. strengthening from one end and compressing from the other is roughly the norm in socialist states. If you focus on one end only, you'll see a wrong picture. Both sides into account. Both the fact that the state tries to care for you, as well as the fact that the state does need to mind its own finances. I almost have enough cans for one more energy drink. Might save it for tomorrow. So we're getting more civilian infrastructure or industry. The next guy will most likely go to building more consumer goods. If I recall correctly, the stability decreases the requirement. No, it doesn't decrease the requirement of consumer goods. These are almost useless for me. This I need. But I really don't need to decrease in daily political power gain. Okay, it's not meltingly hot. Still too hot to turn on the other course though. Days and oil supplies full. There should be an option to decrease the cost of these technologies by allocating command power, I think. As soon as I noticed the gurgling guy sound singing in harsh bass, which is in a couple of these songs, but not in this one, I will remove it from the playlist. Hearts of Iron is a calm, deep strategy game. You don't need to hear Man of War. There's also this weird option in this unit designer of, not actually in this one, but rather this one, to make these individual modifications to these units, which cost experience. So once I have a lot of experience stored up, I will go ahead in the tech tree and get to like later era tanks, but not the super modern stuff because I can't get there anyway. And then use a lot of experience points to make the tank like up to date, but that'll take time. It is still a tank without the upgrades and pretty good at it, but once you add all the upgrades, the tank will be pretty obscenely good. It also costs an enormous amount. But here you can see the problem that Russia is actually facing. While their stockpiles of weapons are actually good, most of them are, so you can see from here, old. Like 3,000 old versions and then 3,000 new versions. So we're in this model, Russia, to go from light conscription to like scraping the barrel and deploy all those guys with the old equipment. They'd still be lacking equipment here and there. But the thing is that if you go to the unit designer here, they're using roughly similar, however, military designs. You can switch the artillery to, say, infantry and remove the artillery consumption while increasing the infantry consumption and still maintaining roughly same kind of military units, so they can start using these old things. And then they can command that the very old weapons are used by the police units and then like recycle the new stuff to the front, but it'll still take time. And I'm still lacking in manpower to deploy the destroyer. So yeah, it's about 2.5 times more. Yeah, about 2.5 times more total manpower than you can deploy in the field, roughly. And I need to increase war propaganda to get war support up, but that's not a quick decision. I need to get the guy that gives me either manpower or experience depending on the situation. So I think I'll take this one because it also gives division attack and defense next. Then I'll probably take the guy that gives me plus 20 experience, or I'll take one of these guys that actually has good benefits for me, which might be rare. I think this might be the guy. Or this one. I think it'll be guns and butter because I use a lot of supply at the moment. Bad supply connection in Central America, so you might as well. And that one short connection gets built next. You can notice that all these guys are using the above connection and not the one that goes parallel to the coastline, and that's causing there to be a drain on that. They should use this one as well. That would free up some of the resources from the northern route to go here, and some of the southern would go here, and the supply would probably increase marginally. But that's not either here nor there. And I could probably stand to upgrade the actual infrastructure in these two provinces before I go on the attack. So Managua will go before that one. Then we'll get this guy before Honduras. Actually, Honduras will get first. No, this guy will get first. Okay. And now one from these that gives me the most benefit. Central American Bank. I don't know if it requires all of these to activate the ones below, but if it does, then it's definitely not 42 when I make my push on Costa Rica. If it allows with one of them to go to the next tier, then I might be able to do this in 42. Once I also have a surplus, which I'm not going to have for a long time, of those. Actually, I do have a surplus. Huh? Interesting. So this is completely without benefit. Must be why it's last on the list. Almost. And actually, second motorized before fighter. So the next guy, if this is still ahead of its time, very little, is gonna be Thompson M28. But I need, yeah, it's very, very, very roughly in very late 42 when I can make my push on Costa Rica. But it's gonna be very late 42. I'm gonna risk it. That might help. Hopefully. Yeah, it's a little bit faster. To be safe, I'll maintain what I initially said of getting both of them by the end of 45. Archaeology on the north coast of Honduras. So yeah, it's not gonna be before 43 because I need the manpower bonus before I go to war, because I'm gonna lose a lot of manpower in the fighting. And I need some in reserve before I go to war, so it's not gonna be 42, it's gonna be pushed all the way to 43. And I have way more trains than I need. Once it drops to like 5, I'll commandeer civilian trains instead of building them. No need to build them for now. Oil isn't full. So we could stand to look at deploying the Air Force just to consume the fuel, but we still need more manpower for that. Okay, so you're gonna be studying the electronic tech. 0.1 year ahead of its time, so that's 0.01, so that's still okay. Last tech, far as I know of, that increases research speed. So let's set the following objective of at least 10,000 in reserve for my army of 100,000, as well as the ability to produce third generation infantry equipment. Naturally, I'll need to get the events to get them cored, otherwise there's no point in taking them, but those are the terms. It will take around 250 to 350 days once I get to studying the infantry tech to get the tech I need. So that's still within the realm of 42 for the war declaration, and the manpower is going to take significantly longer than that because it's going to require quite a lot of political power to do the manpower. Actually, the manpower might, but unlikely to be done in before July 42. The AI is notorious for counterattacking me just before I'm ready for war. It's notorious for that. So keep in mind that this might not go according to my schedule in any way. They're notorious for counterattacking me just as I'm about to be ready. There's no clear sign that I'm going to attack them. They just counterattack me, which means schizophrenia. The Tau are predetermined to not embrace the war. Fleet in Being's primary purpose is what the UK's Navy was during the Second World War, which is to prevent usage of your coastline by the enemy. It's not meant to be deployed in as much. It's meant to be here and there. You take a ship from the stockpile and use it for a specific mission, but for the main part, it's supposed to be kept in reserve for the off chance that the enemy navy either comes to an engagement which will destroy the primary of its navy without harming your navy,
or in the off chance that they engage the nation in a land war that threatens its survival, where the Navy can be used to interdict supply lines. In other words, the British Navy isn't designed to oppose the sea lion landing. That part of the operation is expected to go. If during the Second World War, during the Battle of Britain, the German Navy actually did Operation Sea Lion, in that they tried to land on the UK mainland with their navy, the initial landing is expected to go because they would be deploying fast, while there would be signs of them doing it in advance. If you station the British Navy in the Channel, the enemy air force will be able to destroy them eventually, so they would be kept back. But once the landing beachhead is at a state where they need a constant stream of supplies before they break out, which is what the UK would be able to do, then the Navy is expected to be thrust into the middle of the supply convoys and the landing areas, do the maximum amount of damage for both sides, mine the region, do everything like that, because before the landing you need to clear mines. And even for that, the Navy is not used to counter the Air Forces. So when the enemy has their beachhead ready on your side and are supplying across the channel, then you're supposed to use the Royal Navy. And at that point, you're supposed to entangle the enemy in a situation whereby their beachhead can be destroyed by your landing force before they can resupply it sufficiently, or your colonial whatever force before they can resupply it sufficiently. And the Navy is supposed to get out of the channel with enough of its assets intact to make sure that a second similar landing would not accomplish in any more way than the first one. But they are not expected to be stationed in the channel before the landing, because then they would be very easy for the German Air Force to destroy. So the main base of the British Navy during the Second World War is most likely at the most distant from the beachhead while still on the island's point. So in historical case, it was the Scapa which the German submarines actually got into, but it didn't generate enough attention in Germany as to what that meant. They didn't realize what it meant when an individual submarine could go into Scapa Flow, torpedo a few boats, and get out. They didn't understand what the Navy was telling them. The Navy was telling them that if you do this, the following thing is going to happen. You're going to make a beachhead, they're going to destroy it, and they're going to lose a very, very, very sizable portion of their Navy destroying your beachhead, but not enough to inhibit the second wave or their ability to respond to the second wave. You're going to retain a large portion of your landing fleet, but not the coastline units, because by the time the British make the decision to actually interdict your supplies, you're going to be able to tell and run away further west, away from the British Navy. Now, at that point, if your Air Force is what it's cracked up to be, which seems likely, you'll be able to do some serious damage on the British Navy while they're doing their counter landing thing. You may be able to land 100,000 up to 300,000 in Britain with moderate supplies. And due to the fact that the British are not built for land warfare on their island after Calais in 1940, you're going to get pretty far. But you're going to lose the first wave. They are going to be able to destroy your supplies, and during that time counterattack sufficiently to destroy your beachheads. They are going to be able to do that. But your landing craft, if you haven't been an absolute moron when the British fleet approaches, are going to be intact. And their ability to counter your second wave is also going to be intact. But after they do that, their Navy is kind of gone. while you still have a small landing force, some amount of landing force, and the majority of your air force. And then they have no fleet. They've destroyed 2 of your landings. That much weaker. The British are not going to have a navy. You can openly, with basically surface submarines, destroy any convoy heading to the UK. And that's by summer 41. At that point, if you gather and consistently retrain preparing for the third wave, a experienced, as in you've seen what works, naval and air force with the entire European industrial capacity, which you'll have, against the UK's industrial capacity without its empire and with no convoys, you're going to win. But it's going to cost you 2 entire field armies. That's what it's going to cost you before you have the chance to win. 2 is a certain defeat. If you rush it and try to maintain the first or second waves while the British Navy is engaged with supply interdiction operations in the Channel, you lose the entire war. But if you engage their ships once they do the supply interdiction thing, which will be a flotilla of 200 to 500 ships with their entire air force supporting it, with your entire air force, they're going to be in the battle going to be able to mine and generally make sure that you won't get supplies to the beachhead before it's overrun by the British. But now we're talking about their fleet actually being used instead of being said that they're the best in fleet manners. They'll actually have to lose their fleet to counter you. The first wave might not be enough to make sure that the second wave is uncounterable by their fleet, but the third wave certainly is. If you prepare for it in the process of having to make 3 waves, you'll probably win. That's what they were saying when they hit the Scapa Flow. We can take their fleet on. That was very good bonus, though very unexpected. Now I can do this one. And it did indeed require all 3. I would not consider it optimum scenario if the Axis powers wins, which is why I'm not in the favor of their policy. However, certain amount of their control in the following world openly instead of through various government officials would have been preferable. So I'm not in favor of the current outline either. If the Axis powers represent death, then completely denying it and going without any advice from those expert in it can be considered dumb. If you actually have a force on your planet that plays death, completely eliminating them, as I had outlined in my scenario, seems dumb. Though I am very, very, very much looking forward and hoping that I will continue my storyline about the world where life expectancy increases more for every year than a year. So for every year that you live, you're expected to get that much older, as in live longer instead of live less. Then humanity can do a couple of things like using this newly found energy of increased lifespan to help others. And that is what I am doing in my storyline, talking about such a change. They use their available intellect to challenge themselves to change the conditions of the universe so that all matter in the universe lives longer the longer it lives, as in defeats entropy. That's the way they're doing it. One of their first points is that because our sun turns to a red giant in 5 billion years, but a red dwarf star lives for trillions of years because it has less mass, that they should build solar energy collectors, which cause a one of those loops on the surface of the sun to rise to a predetermined position where it's harvested through a like a filter, so that the lighter elements of hydrogen and helium are returned to the star surface while the heavier elements are gathered from the stream. So in effect, they're mining or farming or whatever the sun, and the only products they're farming from the sun are the products that they know will eventually cause the death of the sun, therefore extending the lifespan of the sun. That's what they're doing. They're proceeding in such a manner towards all forms of life, and I'm writing a Dante's journey as a schizophrenic through such a world. Like what is happening, who is doing what, so on and so forth. What my thoughts think of it. It seems that even for such an immortal being, death is sometimes yearned for righteously. There is a story that my guide in the story showed me of a 1,000-year-old bull, which is then auctioned off for death because it feels it has too much mass. Because as I noticed its predicament, I became sad. It turned to look at me and very, very gently shook the ground I was on strongly, and then laughed at my panic at it, and then snorted its nostrils and went back to sleep. In the metaphor telling me that to continue as such is not to be bull, and that is death. So to give your form over to the great bull and let it put you in the form of a new bull without these powers, but perhaps some memories of its existence, would be preferable. And at that point, death makes you more of your kind, while living makes you less of your kind. So for it, the bull, it is better to vanish and to be reborn. And that is the story it showed me. And in this world, even with an infinitely increasing lifespan, then you will at some point yearn for death. And that is what it showed me, which was very, very important. And thus, to remove death as an option after it is desired for is wrong. Bad soundtrack. Okay, I'll rely on this one. That is sad, but very much true. One of the, I believe, required balances between states is that both states are, in the case of an emergency, autarkies that is able to produce the resources that their population